Okay, so we are continuing with the early years, the Sicha on Shabbos, Parshas Shlach. So we're going to go through this of Tafshin Yud 1950. So again, a few months after the previous Rebbe passes away, and this is a Sicha we were talking about. What was the mistake of the Meraglim, and what triggered Kalev to silence them? And he silenced them because he saw that they deviated from the mission by just changing the order of things. And their focus was on the reward and making a calculation and evaluation if the reward would be worth the effort. What are we fighting for? As opposed to Hashem tells us to do something, especially Moshe Rabbeinu gives us a mission. The Rebbe takes us, of course, to the idea of Skashus in the month of Tammuz, that the skashus to the Rebbe has to be in a way where it's not about asking questions. It's about doing what the Rebbe wants. And in order to avoid a person disrupting the flow of the Shlichus, you have to stay, don't try to change things, even if you think you're trying to change it for the better, which is the idea of the Kabbalas Ol. Of course, you have to use your talents to develop and do everything you can in the best way, but according to the directions that you've been given. Now the Rebbe continues. And the question is, of course, why did Kalev alone go to, as the Gemara tells us, and say to the one that went to daven by the forefathers in Hebron? Why wouldn't all the spies go? Why Kalev? Because Kalev went to stay Mekusha, because to the mission itself doesn't guarantee that you'd be Mekusha. If Moshe sends you, you can make choices that are going to be choices that are going to lead you astray. The Rebbe says, on the sinus koyach, the strength the person has to stay on a course of the Shlichus of the Rebbe. The prat action of the Acher is darkness, especially now after the passing, after Yud Shvat, after Gimel Tammuz. The idea of nishtateach, of kibri ovis, could become on going to the oyel, going to daven by our forefathers. Behegdim, Rebbe explains. Atam shakashem medavrim oidis koyach maricham yadvar. Ein oim zecher tzadik levracha. Isa biyuma oi nishmasa eid. And why don't we say terminologies that would be describing the Frierdiker Rebbe in a way as if the Frierdiker Rebbe is a zecher, a memory of someone who once lived, or his neshama is in the Garden of Eden. The Rebbe says, B'simchas Torah Taprech Tzadik Aleph, Simchas Torah 1931. Amar Koik Dish Marichat, or going 30 going into 31. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, with regard to his father, the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I didn't call my father, the Rebbe Rashab, his soul that's in Eden, in Garden of Eden. I'm not an address writer. I'm not giving addresses of where someone is, of where someone should be. Und wieder von mir is a Tat nicht nostalgic geworden. And also the Rebbe says, even the Frierdiker Rebbe said even more so. Nostalgic means he goes up, he went somewhere else. He's not here, he went to Garden of Eden. He didn't leave, he's still here with us. And then, now the Rebbe translates in Hebrew. And then I don't say I'm my father, his soul that's in Eden. I don't give addresses. I'm not the one to decide. But this is the Rebbe's in general. The idea was, we don't decide he's here, he's there. We don't say, the Rebbe says the same thing about writing a letter. We don't say, another Rachim Rabim by a poem, that's our Lashon, another Rachim Rabim, you want to awaken great compassion. So there used to be those who write, from the source of compassion. The Rebbe says, I don't have to write the source of compassion. It's not, I don't know where the Rebbe is taking Rachmanus from. You don't have to stop to give the Rebbe an address where you're supposed to take Rachmanus from. He should be an Rachim Rabim and Kor Rachim from the source of Rachim. Same thing over here. The Rebbe is not saying the Frierdiker Rebbe is in Garden of Eden, and then I don't give addresses. My father hasn't passed away. Or hasn't left. So when it comes to Frierdiker Rebbe, it's not our place to say that his soul is in Garden of Eden. The Rebbe says, why? Number one, who are we to give addresses where the Frierdiker Rebbe's soul is? The lower Garden of Eden, higher Garden of Eden, another place higher than Garden of Eden. Maybe Garden of Eden is not the ultimate place. It's not our place to start giving addresses where the Frierdiker Rebbe is, where the Rebbe is. Another point is, why are we sending Frierdiker Rebbe away from us? He's in the Garden of Eden. Any rights to be part of the Rebbe doesn't want to separate himself from us. He always wants to be with us. So why are we telling the Rebbe? Nishmasi that his soul is in the Garden of Eden. Doesn't want to be in the Garden of Eden. He wants to be here with Chassidim. The same reason we don't say that the soul of the Rebbe is in Eden. That we remember the tzaddik for blessing, which is like a memory of someone who once was. Why? What's the idea of a memory? Zecher. It's only talking about something that's distant, that we're going to forget. In order not to forget, we say Zecher tzaddik l'bracha. Remember the tzaddik for blessing. We need to do that in our case. How we never forget the Rebbe. Ain't tzarech b'zikaron. We don't have to give ourselves a memory. Just like you don't have to say, I remember someone who's in our life alive with us. So too, with someone who's the Rebbe is so present with us. We don't have to say that we need a memory. But Prati says the Rebbe says more. Isa Gemara, the Talmud teaches us. It says, so a gura can mean to gather, or from the word gur, to live in your tents. It says, I live in your tent, or I dwell in your tent in the worlds. How could it be in two worlds? Cold, so the Gemara says, could a person live in two worlds? So they say, Cold Tamad Chacham, Shaim Davar Shmuel Mepiv, Ba'olam Hazeh, Svasev Davis Bekever. That's a famous idea we've quoted before in the other Fabrangans, that when you quote a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, Tzaddik, in this world, even though he's already passed away, his Svasev Davis Bekever, his lips are moving. Or Parish Taisus over there explains. That even the soul, as it's in Yeshiva Shamayla, in the upper yeshiva, in the upper school, his lips, the tzaddik's lips are moving all the way down to the kever to be speaking the words that you're repeating of the tzaddik. So you're in two places. The soul is in Garden of Eden, while the body is moving because you were quoting the Torah of the tzaddik in this world. Yeshiva Shamayla, whether you're in the upper yeshiva or in the lower yeshiva, Nikras Rakesh Yeshnei Roish Yeshiva and Talmidim. That's only applicable. There's a head of yeshiva and students. Talmidim Levad Einem Yeshiva. If you just have students, it's not a yeshiva. It's just the gathering place of the students. Ki'im Yeshnei Roish Yeshiva. That has to be the head of the yeshiva. That teaches students. When they learn and they go over this, the lesson that they've learned from the head of the yeshiva, then they have more understanding. If you don't understand initially, you come up and when you learn it over, and with time you have you'll comprehend. When you're in the yeshiva, and the yeshiva is made up again of two parts. There's the head of the yeshiva and the students. Yes, yeshiva shamat, there's a lower world. Our yeshivas, that we learn things that we understand in this world. Yes, yeshiva shamat, this way they learn things in the upper yeshiva. Famous story, I think Tzemach Tzedek said, Tzemach Tzedek told the Rebbe Marash, this is how they're learning, I think it was the Gemara Sukkah and Yeshiva Shamayla. Means the ideas that we have here that there has to be a wall and rest. So we have the technical laws. When you take that idea in the Yeshiva Shamayla, it's more on a esoteric and a more rooking spiritual level. They learn the same ideas, but it's in a spiritual way. And there's the yeshiva the way it is before someone passes the way, and after the person passes away. It's only about revealing and concealment. Before someone passes away, they're mainly found in the lower yeshiva. And only spiritually, like the tzaddikim who go up to the higher courts. Right? You have many Gemaras that talks about the Baal Shem Tov went up to the courts above. But that's in a concealed one. So once a person passes away, it's the opposite. That's the soul is found in a revealed way in the higher yeshiva. We have them in a concealed yeshiva shamat in the lower yeshiva, in this yeshiva in this one. This is just a question. The Rebbe is here with us. It's just a question if it's revealed or concealed. But nothing's changed. It's just a question of what part is revealed and what part is concealed. When a person's alive, he's concealed in the higher worlds. We don't see it. We don't know that, like the Hashem made a special tefillah that you should be able to elevate to the higher worlds. And while he's in the higher worlds, be responsive in this world. It means he wanted to be able to be not just in that when he's in this world, he could go up to the next world, but he could also be up in the other worlds, be responding to questions of this world. But that's a question of revelation and concealment. But you're in both places. Talks about in Kinos, talks about about the destruction of the temple. Yirmiyahu says that from above, there doesn't come bad things. Bad things don't come from God. And if it's not possible for things to be good unless you're with the Rebbe, if you're not with the Rebbe, then it's not good. And we said bad things don't happen from heaven. Therefore, the Rebbe is here with us, because the Rebbe not being here, being alone without a Rebbe is bad. And bad things don't come from God. It's only a question if the Frierdiker Rebbe or if the Rebbe is revealed with us now, or it's in a hidden way. Before the passing, the Rebbe was with us in a revealed way. But now the Rebbe is with us in a concealed way, but he's still here with us. So what do we say? How does a person in two worlds? Person's two worlds. When we learn the Torah of a person, therefore his lips are moving in this world and in that world. The very fact you have to prove that's a pasuk, that oilamim, that a person's that that a person can be living in two worlds, 2/10 of two worlds. So we say that it means that when you're learning, the lips are moving here. But that's only a question about how it works. That doesn't change the fact that the Rebbe is with us now. The question is only in revealed or concealed. Frierdiker Rebbe tells, that someone once asked the Rebbe Rashab about certain things of angels or spiritual things that are kind of out of our pay grade. So you talk about, right? The Tzadikim talk about the angels. There's a description of the angels or things that are spiritual. How do you know? Like, what's a raya? We don't see angels. How are you talking about angels? How do you know what the angels do? No one's come from the other world to tell us about an angel. Now we have Gemaras and stuff, but that's the question the person asked. What did the Rebbe Rashab answer? The Rebbe Rashab answered, the person who says, how could you be talking about things of a spiritual realm like angels that we don't see? No one's been there that could testify about angels. So the Rebbe Rashab answered, a marshal example, that there's different levels of knowledge. Not just because you live in a certain reality doesn't mean that the reality of someone else is not where they're living. And what's the example? The famous marshal that Rebbe gives. Marshal Ma'adav, what's an example? The Chachamim, you have two wise people, two Talmidei Chacham, two scholars. Shnaisim ba'agola, there's traveling by wagon. There's Suma l'susim that are connected to horses. Horses are carrying the wagon. When Davin write this malachim, and they're talking about angels. That's the conversation they're having. While they're taking a travel in the wagon. So who's here? We have the wagon and the horse. We have the Talmidei Chacham, and we have the wagon driver. So the Frierdiker Rebbe Rashab said, the horse, everyone's traveling together. The horse thinks, why are we running? Why am I schlepping? Where are we going? We must be going to food, to tevin, to straw, something for me to eat. So the horse is always running, thinking about the food. It must be that there's good food where we're going. Otherwise, why are we schlepping? Why can we stay where we are? That's the horse's idea. And the wagon driver, why is he going on this trip? He's doing it as a job, like an Uber driver, right? It doesn't, to him, the whole job, the whole driving in the wagon is to go from point A to point B. So he gets paid, so he can live a lot, he can pay his bills. So the Rebbe says it's a little bit more refined than the horse. The horse just thinks they're going for food. The person at least is trying to make a living to provide for his or her family. But nevertheless, the horse or the wagon driver, has nothing to do with the conversation that the scholars are having while they're traveling. There's dugmasi beneath in the time, meaning to say, just because you don't know something, we're thinking very coarse. Our mind is like the horse, or in the best case scenario, like the wagon driver. We don't have the broadness of the conversation that the scholars are having. It doesn't mean that this conversation is not happening. We live in a material world. We think everything's material. So we may think, what does it mean the Rebbe is with us? But just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not so. Again, this is a rule of Chalal. But not knowing something doesn't change the fact just because you don't agree with something or you don't like something, doesn't meet with your ideas. It doesn't change the fact. The fact is like this. You don't know, you want to accept it, you don't have to accept it. It doesn't change, it's still not going to change the fact of it. So where do you get strength? To know that the Rebbe is with us, and you have to keep the Shlichus, and you don't deviate from the Shlichus. You have to go to the oil. You have to go daven by the Kever Tzaddik. In the Shtadchus, the Rebbe says, going to the oil. When you go to the oil, you go with the knowledge. As Da is there, this is where he is. Like we said in the previous talk, we try to visualize the face of the Tzaddik, of the Nasi Ador, the Rebbe. And this helps us in our skashus. Stay on course of the mission that we've been given by the Rebbe, each individual. To not deviate, to not make changes to what our mission is, not be weakened. Like the Gemara says that the Meraglim are weak. Moshe should be reign when we hear from the Moshe of our generation. He told us to do something. He gave us a commandment. One time, if a person doesn't strengthen themselves, with time we become weak in the mission and what we've been told in the Takana. Say Rambam, Chitas, other things, Mifsayim, Avos Yisrael. Is Erev Cheshbon Sichli, and we start mixing in our own Cheshbon. Do I really have to say it? Maybe it doesn't mean it. Like the Chet of the Meraglim, like the sin of the slip eyes. So how do you strengthen? Go to the oil and daven that you should stay. That you should stay connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, to the Rebbe of our generation. So what about a person, like we said before, if you can't go to the oil, you don't have the ability to travel. You could also do a shtatchus in a ruchnistic way. Like he says, we learned this in the previous talk on Shavuos. Again, he quotes the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. B'Shem Baal Shem Tov, she'inin ha'shtatchus beruchnis, what does it mean to daven in the oil, to daven by its tzaddik? Spiritually, open up a sefer, open up a Sicha, open up a mimer. Because that's where you'll find the Rebbe. If them hat sich abgegeben, he gave himself over absolutely, totally in his Torah, the Rebbe's Torah, and in them hat sich weggegeben. That's where he applied himself. That where you want to know where Moshe is buried in the Halach and the Mishnayos. That's understood when we learn the Torah of the Rebbe, which is a spiritual going to the oil, going to the shtat to be mishtatech, to prostate out by the Rebbe. The taste of koyach v'ayis b'skashis became shlichus to get the body will strengthen, that we should fulfill our mission the way we should be. Let's see if we maybe go a little further. All right, let's do a few more lines. This idea that we have to means what's the idea of Moshe sending Meraglim, which was the initial question. Why would he send Meraglim? Moshe sending Meraglim is to make ourselves and our space of influence into Eretz Yisrael. And by staying connected to the Moshe of our generation. Yeshin Sinas Koyach Miyuchedes B'Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz. When we're ready, we're not holding there yet. This week is Shabbos, is the week before Shabbos Mevorchim. When we're talking about Shabbos Mevorchim, getting ready for Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz, we have a special chizuk on the idea of Iskashros when we come close to the month of Tammuz. One of the things we find about Tammuz is it's a hot time of the year, right? It's a summer. The Gemara wants to talk about the character of a donkey, that the donkey's always cold. So how do we see how the donkey's always cold, that he's still cold even in the month of Tammuz? The fact that a donkey's cold in December, it's not a chiddush. Everyone's cold in December. Because maybe he's cold, it's not warm outside. Tammuz, which is a hot time of the year. So the Gemara says, well, why the donkey's character is to be cold even in the month of Tammuz? Then we say, why is he cold? It's not because it's cold outside, because he's a cold-blooded animal. The fact that he's cold shows how coarse he is, that he can't even get warm to Torah mitzvahs Chassidus, even in a time of warmth. What does this mean spiritually? That the Shemesh is the sun, and then there's the shield of the sun. That's so too. The Havaya, which is absolute godliness, is shielded by the name of Elokim. And it comes the month of Tammuz. That's when the Shema of Yud Kevavke is. That's why it's warm, because the Mogin is less. There's less concealment. The idea to be warm, to be warm to Torah mitzvahs, to Yiddishkeit, to Chassidishkeit, to Rebbe, is a huge advantage when we talk about avodas Hashem. These are b'sefer Musar Chassidus, and it's brought down in the sefer of Musar and Chassidus. Shekol inyanim avodas Hashem zrich eliyas v'chemimus tafka. We serve God has to be with warmth, excitement, with passion. Yisrael is more than that. The whole purpose of creation is for the Jewish people. Like it says, the whole purpose of the beginning of creation was for the Jewish people called Reishis. Reishis to us. And not just that the Jewish person should be in the world, that's also good, but also because the Jewish person does Torah in the world. For the Torah and the Jewish people. Means what's the point of creation? That the Jewish people should do the Torah in this world. Like it says in Shlach Mevorchim, the whole point of the creation was to do this, which is Torah. So the Talmud Kedusha says, that all that's created is to serve me. And I've been created to serve my master, which is through Torah mitzvahs. So the idea that there's warmth in the world, or a person feels comfortable in the warmth, that idea is also created for Torah mitzvahs. So a person should have the ability to feel warm in their avodas Hashem. So you have to say it's not just that there's warmth. Cold also has to have a benefit. Otherwise, cold wouldn't exist in the world. If you're saying everything in the world is created for the Jewish person, and everything about the Jewish person is the Torah mitzvahs, and therefore the heat is created so a person should be able to serve Hashem in a warm way. But the fact that there's cold in the world means that there's also an avoided that demands coldness. There's a difference between coldness and warmth. The idea of passion and excitement is for the positive, when you apply it in a positive way. You're excited. The positive of curious of coldness is who had there is not to be passionate about things you shouldn't be passionate about, to be cold to Gashmius. You don't have excitement about things that are not godly, so that's a coldness. So therefore the coldness is, of course, it helps in our avodas Hashem, but it's not the part of the proactive in avodas Hashem of Torah. It's not creation, just a lack of passion. Where heat is to be passionate in our avodas Hashem. Right, we'll stop here. Next time we learn the Sicha from this onwards. Again, we're holding page 8. We'll finish it by next week. Ezra Hashem.